schools lost $8.5 million in state aid this year, with possible additional losses in the future. As mayor, what would you do to provide adequate funding, especially in an environment of abatements to large developers that often do not help fund the schools?
About 2 years ago or so, I wrote an op-ed that said we really need to share abatement revenue with the public schools. It hadn't been shared with the public schools by statute for a long time. Now, Councilman Phillip and candidate Phillip said he would share revenue from tax abatements. The city doesn't get conventional taxation, it gets what they call payment in lieu of taxes with the schools. And then as mayor, he proceeded to not do it. Until relatively recently, he did an executive order setting aside 10% of that revenue. To me, there was a few reasons why we need to move in that direction. One is there was writing on the wall about cuts in state aid, and that did in fact happen, and I think it didn't happen to the degree I thought was possible, and hopefully there won't be any more. Two, the trend of people having kids and then leaving Jersey City, thankfully, has changed, and there's more and more people staying here and raising their children. So I thought the time had, and then the other thing is, believe it or not, in certain circumstances, the city actually makes out better. When I say the city government gets more revenue from certain abatements than it does under conventional taxes, because it essentially keeps almost all of it with a small portion that goes to the county. Whereas when it's conventional taxes, the city has to share the revenue with the schools and the county and gets less than 50%. I thought that if you are required to distribute some of that revenue with to the schools as you would with conventional taxes, the city would be less likely to err in favor of granting an abatement when it's time to make that decision. Because at the end of the day, the city should not be giving an abatement unless it's a but-for situation. But for the abatement, the development won't occur. That's what abatements are supposed to be. Thank you.
Look, it's hard for me to understand Bill talking about everybody paying their fair share when he himself lives in a tax-abated building that he negotiated that doesn't pay towards the schools. And again, he negotiated the tax abatements for the previous 10 years on behalf of the city council. What have we done? We curtailed the tax abatements downtown. The last 2 years, we haven't, the major construction projects are not even building with tax abatements, period. You look at the China construction one, the Boys and Girls one, the second kind of China construction one, totally constructing without tax abatements because we have curtailed that. Number one. Number two is we have a great working relationship with the superintendent. Some of the trends that are changing there, I can take credit for the reason that I got all the political blame for actually being at the forefront of looking to change leadership in the schools. Going out and doing a national search for a new superintendent that has done tremendous things to move the schools forward. We have expanded after-school programs. We have worked towards summer jobs that didn't exist. We are hiring 1,000 young summer people, partnering with the Board of Education now. So we are doing more and more and more with the schools. We're continuing to overlap more on resources. When the fundings got cut this year by Trenton, we worked with the superintendent of schools and nobody saw a tax increase on that. So we have a track record on this. So when I look at what we've done over the last 4 years, again, I'm proud of our record versus the previous 10 years. I'm proud of our record versus anybody else. And I want to continue making that progress that we started.
Understand the fact that I rent an apartment in a building that was given an abatement. I guess, what does that have to do with the question of getting money for the schools and dedicating some of the revenue from abatements to that? I pay market rent. That's the fact of the matter. But once again, the mayor is making statements that are just not in accord with reality. Thankfully, the press has proven this to be false. He curtailed downtown abatements. You've doubled the amount of downtown abatements in your first term versus Healy's second term. You've given out more abatements overall in your first term than Healy did in his second term. It was researched, published in the Jersey Journal.
I would urge the viewers to check that out. That's just actually not true. And obviously living in a tax-abated building actually is very relevant when you talk about everybody paying their fair share. The conversation was about people paying into schools and schools funding. You're running to be the chief executive of the city, and you yourself are not paying into the schools. So I do think it's a relevant conversation piece, and I'm more than happy to bring it out in this conversation.
Jersey City has become a sanctuary city, a self-declared status that restricts police and social services with cooperating with federal immigration authorities unless suspects are involved in a serious crime. Will you continue this status even at the risk of possible loss of federal money? And how will you make up for the lost revenue?
This is Al's question, obviously.
We all care
I'll
about
go
it.
first, right?
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay, so look, I think my position on sanctuary cities is well documented. We are at the forefront of reaffirming our position as an immigrant city, continuing to protect all of our residents. I think it's important. We made a strong statement around that. I think the courts up to this point have shown that they will not allow federal funding to be taken away from cities that continue to protect everybody. And I'm going to continue down the road that we started. I think I've been very clear on that. We've said it with conviction, and I don't see anything changing.
Thank you for the question. It's, to me, it's absolutely a personal issue in many regards. That my father came here as an undocumented immigrant, what some people would call an illegal immigrant, stowed away in a ship, got caught, was actually deported, and had to come back a second time, and made it that time, and he achieved the American dream in Jersey City. You know, he owned and operated his own business, raised a family of 7, and me, like I said, he died when I was 16. I worked in restaurants throughout my life. I worked with many, many undocumented immigrants, and their work ethic, and their overall, what they brought to the table in America was they came here because they had this incredible drive to succeed. And in many regards, I thought that they were blowing away my own work ethic, and because they had a special drive. You know, when you're running across the border, you're stowed away in a ship. Now, having said that, we have to respect immigration laws, and for me, it's kind of a conflict. I'm also a lawyer. I actually worked with political asylum seekers as an attorney and help people get asylum here. To me, it's a no-brainer that as the police department in Jersey City should not be enforcing immigration laws. As the fact of the matter is, the state of New Jersey is essentially a sanctuary state, where the Attorney General guidelines that were implemented by Attorney General Milgram underneath Governor Corzine were not modified by Governor Christie. And, you know, I was at a conference at the New York Times about the future of American cities, and the chief of police of Houston, who is himself an immigrant, said his slang is, we want crooks, not cooks. And basically, if you've committed a crime and you're an illegal immigrant or an undocumented immigrant, yeah, we should coordinate with the authorities, absolutely. But otherwise, we should not be delving into that business.
Yeah, I think it's a place that Bill and I actually really agree. And I think that the policy of protecting every resident actually makes the community safer. You want cooperation with your police department, you want communication with your police department, and I think having a welcoming city fosters that sort of communication, which is important to stopping crime. So from a city standpoint, I'm proud of where we are, and I think that it's important to continue.
Rebuttal.
I hope it's true that we can withstand court challenges. I don't even know what Attorney General Sessions and President Trump are going to do in this regard. I've heard a lot of bluster and talk about, and there's been some seemingly moves toward depriving some sanctuary cities. I would only question whether, since we were in effect a sanctuary city, publicizing our stance so much, I looked at this and I candidly had a little bit of a dilemma. On the one side, I see a benefit to doing it because you're telling people who are here, who are undocumented, you don't have to be afraid of your municipal government, and then there's a way to do that maybe without so much press. And then on the other end of it, it's like, are we sticking a bear here in the Trump administration? So who knows what he's going to do? Because I don't know if he knows, and whether or not, I mean the president, and then. God willing, we will withstand the legal challenge. And we'll have a lot of great lawyers fighting the same case from across the country in other cities and states.